Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Yashasvi Singh, an SD at Bosscoder Academy. So today we'll be discussing about the front-end roadmap. So let's dive into it. So I hope you guys would have used apps like Swiggy, Zomato or Uber, right? Or any other app. So हमने देखा होगा कि जब भी हम ऐसे apps use करते हैं, so we see something, right? कि जैसे we notice that जब भी हम Zomato use करते हैं तो उसका रेड एंड व्हाइट इंटरफेस है, राइट? और हम स्विगी यूज करते हैं तो उसका ऑरेंज एंड व्हाइट इंटरफेस होता है, राइट? उधर भी हम वी कुड परफॉर्म डिफरेंट थिंग्स, राइट? वी कुड ऑर्डर स्टफ, राइट? हम कार्ट में चीजें ऐड कर सकते हैं, हम कार्ट से चीजें डिलीट कर सकते हैं, राइट? वी कुड ट्रैक कि वेयर आर ऑर्डर इज, राइट? सो वी कुड डू ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स, राइट? सो हाउ इज ऑल ऑफ दिस पॉसिबल? ये कैसे पॉसिबल है? जो भी हमें दिखता है एप्स पे, जो भी होता है, ये कैसे पॉसिबल है? दिस ऑल ऑफ दिस इज पॉसिबल बिकॉज ऑफ समथिंग कॉल्ड फ्रंट एंड, right? So let's dive deep into how is this front end developed, or what is the roadmap of this front end, how we move forward with it. First of all, the very basics of this front end starts with web development. So web development comprises of two languages, that is HTML and CSS. Okay, so HTML and CSS से ही हमारा सारा basics बनता है. If you'll explore any website, any application that is visible to you onto your browser, तो हम देखेंगे कि अगर if we just open the developer console, right, so you'll find all the code, right, that is hosted onto the browser is always written in HTML or CSS, right? You'll find all the code in HTML, right? Although there is some styling going on with it, so that is done by CSS. But at the core level, if your app is visible onto the browser, it would always be in HTML, right? So learning HTML and CSS as the basics is super important, because at the end of the day, right, you may write code in any language, any framework, right? If it is visible to you on your browser, so it would be always be in HTML. Okay. So it is very important for you guys to understand how important HTML is, right, and how it works. Okay, so this is the basic part, which is about HTML and CSS. Once we are completed with the first part, that is about HTML and CSS, or we have some basic knowledge about how our app works, right, or how HTML and CSS works, right, how things are visible to us on our browsers, right? So the second part comes up, which is called JavaScript, right? So JavaScript, again, we already know what JavaScript is. JavaScript is another language which is used for applying functionality to whatever we see, right? So whenever you click a button, right, जब भी हम, let's say I just gave an example of Zomato, right? So Zomato आप जब भी जाते हो, कोई भी आपको चीज ऑर्डर करनी होती है, so there is an add button, right? उस add button को आप क्लिक करते हो and that thing is added to your cart, right? So when I click on it and this thing is added to cart, right? So ये functionality है कि मैं अपनी कार्ट में कुछ ऐड कर पा रहा हूँ. So how do you get this functionality? How do you attain this functionality, right? So that is due to something called JavaScript. Right? So JavaScript मुझे help करता है कोई भी functionality add करने में. Right? So it is very important to learn JavaScript, because the further things that we discuss in the front-end development roadmap are based on JavaScript, right? Although there are other languages as well. There is Java, which could do all of the web development, all of the full stack development in only one language. But apart from this, JavaScript is the one main language which would help you to work with front-end, back-ends and everything, right? So JavaScript is the second most important thing, or the second part in this roadmap for front-end development. Once we are done with the JavaScript, then moving forward with it, we have something called the third part of the roadmap, that is called frameworks, right? Frameworks and libraries. So frameworks and libraries are another integral part of this front-end development. So moving on with frameworks and libraries, we have so many libraries, so many frameworks which could help you in front-end development. So talking about the most famous one, that is, I'll take a very small example about apps, right? So whenever consider an app, again Zomato or Swiggy, तो उसमें हम क्या देखते हैं कि whenever we change something, right, जब भी हम एक दूसरे रेस्टोरेंट पे जाते हैं या पेज चेंज करते हैं, so this app doesn't reloads, right? ये पूरा reload नहीं होता, but we are redirected to the new page very fast, right? हम एक पेज से दूसरे पेज पे बहुत जल्दी redirect कर लेते हैं, right? So this is a functionality which is provided to us by something called frameworks and libraries. So frameworks और libraries क्या है? वो हमें एक इंटरफेस प्रोवाइड करती हैं जिससे हम अपना कोड मोर एफिशिएंटली विद लेस लाइंस ऑफ कोड लिख सकें, ताकि हमारी फंक्शनैलिटी और एक्सेसिबिलिटी इजी हो, right? That is what frameworks and libraries are. If I'll take an example of some very basic frameworks of JavaScript, so there is something called Next, जो कि एक बहुत ही फेमस फ्रेमवर्क है जो आजकल हर नई कंपनी यूज कर रही है. एंड अनदर लाइब्रेरी ऑफ जावास्क्रिप्ट इज समथिंग कॉल्ड रिएक्ट, जो कि बहुत फेमस है. आई होप मेनी ऑफ यू गाइस वुड हैव हर्ड ऑफ इट. So React is another library which is being widely used for constructing apps, right? Which has again so many functionalities. It is fast, reliable, scalable, right? So these are a few things about frameworks and how do these frameworks work. So it is very important as a front-end developer to learn these frameworks, to understand these frameworks, to understand the usage of these frameworks. Again, if your app is being rendered onto the browser, we know it is going to be rendered in HTML, right? So then that why was this use of framework required, right? So हमारे लिए जानना बहुत जरूरी कि जब हमारे पास चीजें हैं, हमारे पास लैंग्वेजेस हैं जो कि एट द एंड ऑफ द डे वही यूज होनी है, तो हम फ्रेमवर्क सीख ही क्यों रहे हैं, right? So again, answer to this is framework helps us with writing code in much more easier format, much more faster format with less lines of code, right? And in a better way, okay? जो कि हमारी overall accessibility, overall efficiency को बहुत बढ़ाता है ऐप को यूज करने में. So that was all about frameworks and how do they work. Now comes the fourth step, that is about tools, right? So we're going to be talking about some very basic tools. So अगर मैं एक आइडिया दूं कि सबसे बेसिक टूल्स कौन से जो हम यूज करते हैं in industry right now for front-end development, so it is going to be something called Git and GitHub. So Git and GitHub are two different tools which we use for management of our code. Let's say एक ही कोड पे बहुत सारे डेवलपर्स काम कर रहे हैं and I have to manage that code, so I manage it using something called Git or GitHub. So I create something called branches जहाँ पे सब अपना अपना कोड अपलोड करते हैं and it is being merged as per the admin permission to the main repository where our main code base is stored. So it helps us to work with or manage the code more efficiently, more effectively, so that different people could contribute to a single repository or a single repository of code. So this was about Git, right, or GitHub. GitHub is also, you could say, a product of Git, right, which helps us to store our code onto browser and access it anywhere, not browser, but yeah, technically a server, and access it anywhere we want. Right, you could say this is just like something very similar to that of Google Drive, but for code. Right, here I could store my code, manage my code, okay, update my code as per my need via accessing it from anywhere. That is what the core functionality of Git and GitHub is. So this is one of the tools. Then moving on further, we have so many other tools as well for designing, for management, right, for keeping track of our softwares, right, for tracking the software development lifecycle. So there are again many tools to discover, but these were the few ones which are very important and which a front-end developer should must know. And the final step in this roadmap would be about building tools, right? Now what are building tools? Building tools would help you to create your project, right, or host your project, right? If I give you an example, so there is a tool called npm, right, npm, which helps you to create your projects, right, manage your project, right? So that is one tool. Again, there are again so many tools there. Okay, there are bundlers, there are compilers, there are transpilers, which helps you to build your project, right? Build your project or host it onto websites. So there are again so many tools to do that as well. This was all about the front-end development roadmap. I really hope you find this video helpful. If you find it helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and see you back again.